What is happening, everybody? MG here, MG Covers, bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. Title of this video, how to identify sharp line movement in college football. This is a very educational video. We're going to use a real life example from this week's week 0 of the 2022 season. Before we do that, as always, greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel. If you want to learn about sports betting, it's a great channel to follow. Ton of content. If you want to follow me on Instagram, put out a lot of content there as well. MG Covers, cover spelled with a Z. And a quick apology, I have been sick this past weekend, and I have a ton of content that I'm going to put out. We have 3 new products that we're going to launch this week. Super excited, working on that diligently. But this video, I had to make this video. I think this will help you a lot, and we have a really good example from this week's games. So let's dive into it. What I want to talk about, line movement, how to identify sharp line movement in college football. Out of all the sports, line movement is probably the most consistent in NFL and college football as compared to other sports like Major League Baseball, college basketball, NBA, etc. And in my opinion, I think it's easier to identify the movement because in a money line sport where that line will move all over the place, plus 120 up to plus 140, maybe down to 132, it's a little bit easier when you're dealing with, simple numbers, 3.5 down to 3, etc. So that being said, let's dive right into the first example. Whoops, I want to slide over here to this one, Northwestern and Nebraska. Okay, now the quick lesson, the way that I teach, the way that I learned from my mentor in this business, Bob McCune, we play games late. Now, I'm not saying that if you play games early, that's wrong. I'm saying it's wrong. I wouldn't say it's wrong for me. It's just not how I play, right? There's a lot of sharps, they will play games early when the lines are released. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? But for me, I want the benefit of line movement. So the later we play, very close to kickoff, we can benefit. And the concept that what you want to focus on, the most important movement is the last movement. And if you're taking notes, write this down. Sharp movement is late and it's subtle. And we're going to use this example here from Northwestern, Nebraska. This game went off at 12:35. Okay, notice early, this is not as important, even though we still kind of look at it. It was 11.5, right? This line goes all the way up to 13 in favor of Nebraska, okay? And now look what happens, 12:11, it goes down to minus 12.5. 12:20, it goes to 11.5. At 12:28, it's at 11. Look what happens right before kickoff. Bam, it moves another half point down to 10.5. That line movement favors Northwestern. So, classic example, that was a huge upset. Northwestern won that, just to show you if you're sort of new or didn't really watch the games over the weekend. I think we have it here, right? Yeah, 31-28. So going back to that, the late movement there in that last, you say, well, how late? Generally, the last 30 minutes is sort of a good rule of thumb, but that can occur in like the last 30 minutes. So that line is moving in the direction of Northwestern there. Okay? All right, let's take a look at another one. Charlotte and Florida Atlantic. Now, this is a glitch right here. It shows this game went off at 7, so the last line movement was minus 6.5. So just ignore this. I'm not sure why that ended up there. But what we do when we're looking at line movement, this is a key point. I don't want to get into the gist of why, but just know this. If line movement doesn't move, which means there's very little movement at all, it doesn't move. It basically stays the same. More times than not, that favors the favorite. Okay. And this was a classic example of that. You can see, and when I'm looking at line movement, I don't go way back 24th, 25th. I'm looking at the day of. So we look at that morning there at 12:38, it was minus 7. Now it did bump a half point to 6.5 at 3:48. But this game didn't go off until like 7 o'clock. It stays at 6.5, does not move at all. So there's no movement at all. That favors Florida Atlantic, or favors the favorite. And Florida Atlantic, let's go just so we can see it. So it seems like it's better if I'm showing these scores too while I'm doing this right. Where's the game at? Yeah, there we go. Florida Atlantic wins in a blowout, 43-13. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. Nevada, Mexico State. Interesting line movement here. This kind of bounced around. You can see, let's look at the day of. See here at 10 that morning, it was at 7.5. So at 5 o'clock, this game goes off at 10. It's down to 7, right? And then it gets closer to game time, the hour before game time, it bumps up to 7.5, which would favor Nevada because it's moving in that direction, 7.5. But look what happens here at approximately 10 minutes before the game. It goes back half a point. Again, what we're trying to look for is that last movement. That's what we identify as sharp movement. It moves in favor of New Mexico State, back down from 7.5 to 7. But New Mexico State ended up losing that game. And what you want to learn too, if you're new here, the concepts that I'm teaching and sports betting concepts in general, this is very important. There were so many things I took for granted when I started coaching, is that I think sometimes people are not, I don't want to use the word smart enough, but they're not realistic when it comes to numbers. When we're dealing with sports betting, we're talking about more times than not. We're not saying that this works 100% of the time, because nothing in sports betting works 100% of the time. But if you apply these concepts 100% of the time, it will work most of the time. Okay. So that was the Charlotte, Florida Atlantic. So the next one, Nevada, Mexico State. We looked at that one. The next one, Connecticut, Utah State. Very good one here. So we looked the day of here, come down. It was at 26.5, and then goes down to 25.5, up to 26, back down to 24, 24, 24. Now we're getting close. This game's going off at 4 o'clock. So it's at 24.5. And look what happens at 3:29. And remember at the beginning of that video, I told you the how do we identify sharp line movement? Sharp line movement is late. Okay, this is late, 30 minutes before kickoff, and it's subtle. It only moves a half a point. Okay, moves from plus 24.5 down to 24 in favor of Connecticut. And we'll see here. Yep, Connecticut covers this one. Okay. All right, going on to the next one, North Texas, UTEP. I kind of like UTEP in this one. Line movement definitely favored them. It's an interesting game. So you can see here the day of, this line was at 2. UTEP, it goes all the way, it kind of bounces here. Now it starts to go in favor of UTEP from 2 down to 1.5. And then we look right before kickoff here, it goes to 1, then finally to minus 1.5 in favor of UTEP. Unfortunately, UTEP got blown out in that game by North Texas. So it's important to show these where it, quote, doesn't work. But again, if you apply the concept 100% of the time, it's going to work most of the time. All right, let's slide over here. Wyoming and Illinois, great example here. Wyoming, the day of this game was basically, this line stayed at 14 the whole time. Minus 14 at 9 a.m. It goes off at 4. You can see there was literally no movement. So it stays at 14. No movement whatsoever. When the line doesn't move, who does that favor? It favors the favorite at minus 14. And Illinois wins that one in a blowout and covers easily. So these are really, really, really good examples. Vanderbilt and Hawaii. A lot of movement in this game. You can go, let's just look this morning, the day of the game, it was, 8.5. It bumps up to 9. Now it gets up to 10. Goes down to 9.5, goes down to 9, back up to 8.5, 9. Now look here, an hour before it was at 9, then goes down to 8. And look what happens, very subtle at the end. And again, a full point in college football or even NFL, that's significant. I showed you that previous example where it was only a half point of movement. A full point, that's a significant amount. And so at 10:17, 10 minutes before the game, this line bumps back up to 9. So that favors Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt wins that one in a blowout as well, 63-10. Okay, let's dive over. Okay, UNLV, Iowa State, 22. Let's see, this line's at 22, down to 21, up to 21.5, back down to 21. And then look what happens. So this game's going off at 3:30, right? So if you're watching this live, you can see here at 3:25, it goes a half point to 21.5. Now look what happens at 3:27. It moves another example. It moves a full point. Going back to the premise of this video, how do you identify sharp movement? Sharp movement is late and it's subtle. So there you go, a full point there from 10 minutes before kickoff goes to 22.5, and UNLV wins and covers in a blows them out, but it wasn't a huge cover, but they definitely covered. So just to quickly review here, line movement, it is a essential part of handicapping. It's not the only thing that I'll look at, but it's very important and can make you money and also save you money in college football. College football is right around the corner. People always ask me what my best sport is. It is college football and NFL. Last year, college football, we had a record year. We're the second best handicapper at Sports Watch Monitor, 36-29, 55%. We had a 28% yield. So a huge ROI last year for college football. If you want access to the power rankings, we'll release our college football power rankings after week 2. They probably won't be, quote, legit until week 3. You get access $49.95 per month. If you want access to all my plays, that's $99 per month. The best value, I'm telling you, this is the best way to do it. You can study with me for an entire year. You get access to everything on the sites, $4.99 for the entire year. Get access to the coaching videos, all the power rankings, as well as all my plays for an entire year for $4.99. You save about $600. There's a link to join in the description box. Greatly, greatly appreciate you guys watching the video, and huge shout out to a lot of subscribers here in the last couple weeks, even though we haven't put out a ton of content. Regardless, good luck this year in college football, guys. Peace.